Tonight, an iconic strip of Darwin coastline has been earmarked for a new national park. Why conservationists believe the plan won't do enough to protect the habitat. A government review flags major changes to Australia's universities. Donald Trump easily wins the South Carolina primary, but opponent Nikki Haley fights on. And AFL-NT condemns violence against umpires after an on-field incident at Marara Oval. Good evening, Isabella Tolhurst with ABC News. By the middle of the year, the breathtaking beaches of Casuarina Coastal Reserve could become the territory's newest national park. But some environmentalists are disappointed that the government won't consider buying back the Lee Point development block next door, which could soon be bulldozed for a controversial housing development.
The sweeping beach and bushland of Casuarina Coastal Reserve, beloved by endangered animals and Darwin locals, could soon become a national park under an NT government proposal.
This feels like a bit of a big win. If it means that they're not building here and they're keeping it natural, then that's a good thing.
The change will add extra hoops for developers to jump through in order for any future projects to be approved.
With the national park development process, it has its own strict level of criteria and regulation that would need to be adhered to should any development proposal be placed.
But right next door at Lee Point, long-time community campaigners have mixed emotions
You'll see that tree there,
as they continue a fight to stop developers bulldozing woodland for an 800-home development on a block already home to endangered species, including the Gouldian finch.
Wildlife doesn't just stop at a boundary; it moves through as food and things, flowers and insects. So, they don't recognise boundaries of national parks.
While the proposed national park will encompass the entire Casuarina Coastal Reserve and an extra 34 hectares of Crown land, the NT government's ruled out buying back the Lee Point development site from the Commonwealth. The development's on pause until late March, while the federal government considers a claim of Larrakia cultural heritage on the site. But ecologists say the fates of threatened animals across the two sites are intertwined.
And if you take out a big chunk of their habitat, the park might not support them anymore.
The government's seeking community feedback on how best to use the park before creating a management plan.
Unless they, put their money where their mouth is and actually direct money into managing that park, I'd say it really is just window dressing.
The park could be declared as early as mid-year. Lillian Rengia, ABC News, Darwin.
A 60-year-old woman has escaped with minor injuries after she was attacked with scissors while on a walk in Palmerston yesterday afternoon. NT police say a man began following the woman on foot around 3:30, beginning in Emery Avenue in Woodruff and continuing for around 20 minutes. They say the woman turned down an alleyway to avoid him, where he attacked her from behind. She managed to escape, sustaining minor injuries to her face and hand. Meanwhile, police in Alice Springs are investigating a separate attack on a 24-year-old woman in Eastside around 11 o'clock on Friday night. Police say a man inappropriately grabbed the woman and forced her to the ground near this intersection before she broke free. Anyone with information is urged to contact police. There's still no sign of the bodies of Luke Davies and Jessie Baird, 2 days after a New South Wales police officer was charged with their alleged murders. Detectives today expanded their search to the southern tablelands, nearly 200 kilometres south of the alleged crime scene, with divers called in to assist. The police commissioner said detectives are working around the clock to find answers and asked the community for patience.
Bag after bag, police collect more evidence from an eastern Sydney home, the scene of an alleged double homicide. Today's seized items fill a car boot, but police still haven't found Jessie Baird and Luke Davies.
My wife and I actually ran into Jessie and Luke only a week or so ago, and they both seem so happy, in love.
It was at this terrace, rented by Jesse, that police found a large volume of blood and a bullet on Wednesday. Ballistic testing allegedly revealed it came from a police firearm. On Friday, Constable Beau Lamar Condon, Jesse's ex-boyfriend, turned himself in at Bondi Police Station and was charged with 2 counts of murder. Detectives say he's offered no assistance in locating the bodies. The investigation has taken police from Sydney up to Newcastle, and today they expanded their search south to Goulburn. Questions are expected to be raised about the force's firearms policies and mental health assessments of officers.
No doubt that police investigation and subsequent investigations will put forward recommendations, if they are needed, to change in the way in which we operate in that space.
Should it surface that there's additional needs and additional demand, then of course we'll consider that on its merits.
Dozens of mourners have left flowers for the couple outside Jesse's home in Paddington. The police commissioner is urging the community to be patient as detectives try to determine exactly what happened to the 2 young men.
This happening right around Mardi Gras, when it's a celebration of gay life, it just hits that much harder.
The most difficult thing is just to comprehend what has actually happened, and especially at the moment as well, not knowing where Jesse and Luke are.
A shaken community desperate for answers. Helena Burke, ABC News, Sydney.
As communities in Western Victoria begin to assess the damage from last week's fires, we're being warned of more dangerous days ahead, with extreme conditions forecast around Wednesday. At least 6 houses have been lost and 288 properties affected by bushfires between Raglan and Mount Cole. Crews are still battling those fires, and late today a wind shift prompted a new emergency warning for Chute and Mount Lonark to the east, for residents to take shelter immediately, as well as an air quality warning for Ballarat. Rachel Clayton reports.
Water bombers attack the fire front near Amphitheatre north of Beaufort as it continues to burn out of control. Nearby residents have seen at least 1 home lost.
We've seen, one that definitely went up was just the black smoke, yeah.
But local landowner Leon Allen is staying for now.
We're pretty confident here. Like, as you can see, we've got a lot of short grass around the paddocks and not near the bush, so that's a good thing.
Around 550 firefighters are working to contain the fire. Crews from around Victoria have pitched in to help with the effort. Residents are being told not to return home, and there are warnings it could be another 3 weeks until the current fires are extinguished. Inside the fire-impacted area of Raglan, some stock is on the move. While these cattle survived the fire, there's little feed around. As communities here continue to count the cost, they are also being warned of difficult days ahead, with extremely dangerous conditions expected for many areas next week.
We are expecting temperatures around 40 and the high 30s. Basically anything west of the Hume would be areas of concern for the state.
At a community meeting in Beaufort, local incident controller John Rofe is warning nervous residents to prepare for the worst.
We hope to keep this where it is, that's our aim. But we're going to be upfront and say that may not be successful.
We're expecting not only high temperatures, but also wind is expected. And given the hot weather that we have had in recent weeks, a lot of drying has occurred, particularly in the west of the state.
A race against time to contain the risks before catastrophic conditions hit on Wednesday. Rachel Clayton, ABC News, Beaufort.
The biggest university reforms in a generation. That's what's been proposed by a government review of the sector released today. Everything from research funding to more than doubling the number of students on campus has been proposed, but the government is yet to commit or reveal how they'd pay for it all.
Jade Smith always loved learning, but grew up thinking the ivory towers of university life were out of reach.
The idea of university was something that was really unattainable and quite fantastical to some degree. I didn't know anyone who had been to university.
The campuses of the future may not be so lonely. The government's proposing meeting Australia's skills challenges by lifting the number of university places available from 860,000 today to 1.8 million in 2050.
In the decades ahead, we need 80% of our workforce, not just to have finished school, but to have gone to uni or to TAFE.
With equity targets to ensure more new students are from poorer backgrounds, regional areas and First Nations families.
We've got to smash down an invisible barrier that stops a lot of kids from poor families and our outer suburbs and the regions from getting a crack at university in the first place.
Education charities welcome this, along with potential changes to student debt and extra support to help new students adjust.
We'd love to see that sort of support embedded in campus.
That is what this is all about.
There's plenty of homework to be done to find a way to pay for the 47 recommendations in the 400-page report.
This is bigger than one budget. This is a plan not for the next few years, but for the next few decades.
I think what it really reveals is that higher education in Australia has been chronically underfunded now for decades.
While many universities welcomed the plan, a proposal to have the wealthiest campuses pay $5 billion in tax to contribute to less well-off institutions drew an immediate backlash from the leaders who'd be forced to cough up.
I think it's odd that the revenue measure would be to tax the universities that have been starved of funding. The system needs more money.
Back on campus, Jade Smith is gearing up for her masters and would love to see more inclusive campuses.
It's been an incredibly fantastic experience.
Sandstone for all. Connor Duffy, ABC News.
As debate rages in Canberra over how to tackle Australia's housing affordability problem, rental prices continue to surge. But what sparked the current crisis, and are there signs of improvement? Here's the ABC's Alan Kohler.
Something very significant happened in March 2020. Yes, that's when a virus named SARS-CoV-2 came to town and Australia went into lockdown like most of the world. But something else happened at the same time that, unlike COVID, has not faded. The growth rate of rent across the country went from 2% a year to 9.1%. Why? What happened in March 2020 to cause a rental crisis that's still with us? Well, it was three things, one after the other. First, average household size dropped dramatically because share houses virtually disappeared because of COVID. That meant that even as immigration stopped, the need for housing didn't decline. Flatmates.com reports that share housing is bouncing back, with an 11.2% lift in membership in the past month. So maybe that will take some pressure off this year. Second, immigration then bounced back dramatically to be double what it was before the pandemic. And third, when interest rates started shooting skywards in 2022, property investors bailed out. That is, negative gearing, deducting mounting losses against other taxable income, wasn't enough to keep them in the game. The result was that the national rental vacancy rate collapsed in March 2020 and didn't recover. And while the national increase in rents last year was 9%, that's just an average. Some suburbs saw truly horrendous increases. The top 4 suburbs in Australia increased by over 50%. The thing about rent is that it's not what economists call discretionary spending. If you don't pay the rent, you're homeless.
Donald Trump is marching towards the Republican nomination for president after a resounding win in his party's 4th nomination contest. The result was declared just minutes after polls closed in South Carolina. His challenger, Nikki Haley, has vowed to stay in the race, but looks unlikely to stop Mr. Trump from securing the nomination.
Please welcome the next president of the United States.
Notching up another victory.
This was a little sooner than we anticipated. It was an even bigger win than we anticipated.
Voters in South Carolina apparently undaunted by the slew of criminal charges the former president is facing.
I know where Donald Trump took us in the last 4 years of his term and decided to go back that direction. So.
One exit poll of 2,000 voters here finding more than 60% would still support Mr. Trump, even if convicted of a crime, with a similar percentage doubting Joe Biden won the previous election.
We're Trump supporters, right?
Both of us, yeah.
Always have been?
Always have been, yeah.
Nikki Haley found some support on her home turf, performing a little better than polls had predicted.
Yeah, I voted for Nikki Haley. Donald Trump is a crazy person.
She's the person for the job.
But it wasn't enough. The state's former governor defiant nonetheless.
I'm not giving up this fight when a majority of Americans disapprove of both Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Nikki Haley vowing to continue fighting, at least until Super Tuesday in early March.
So much of that decision is about, what does the money look like? Do you have enough money to keep going? Does she feel like she's making an important case? Maybe she's thinking about kind of what's going to happen in 2028 or 2032.
Behind the bravado, there's disappointment for Nikki Haley. This loss in her home state, further proof of the grip that Donald Trump has on the Republican Party.
Probably time for her to move out.
I think it's time for the party to unite.
Nikki Haley has done just enough here to fight on a little longer.
We love you all. God bless you all.
Against what increasingly feels like the inevitability of Donald Trump's nomination. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Charleston, South Carolina.
US and British forces have carried out airstrikes on more than a dozen Houthi targets in Yemen. The Pentagon says the strikes are directed at underground weapons, missile storage facilities and air defence systems. It's the latest round of fighting against the Iran-backed Houthi group, which continues to attack ships in the Red Sea in support of Palestinians in Gaza. Almost daily strikes by the US alone have so far failed to halt the attacks, which are disrupting global supply chains. To tonight's special report. Most Australians don't have to think twice about getting from A to B, but for people with disability, using transport services requires meticulous planning and things often go wrong. Fed up with what they see as a lack of action, some have taken matters into their own hands. Advocates are calling for decision makers to make accessibility reforms more of a priority.
I've had trains drive off me.
Been dropped off in a place where it took me 3 hours to get back home.
We feel disrespected. We feel like a second-class citizen.
These are stories from people trying to get on with life. The ABC has heard hundreds of accounts from people with disability struggling with transport. They want you to know that it doesn't matter what disability you have, the mode of transport you take or where you live. Getting around is harder than it should be.
Neil first became a quadruple amputee after contracting meningococcal. Transport's been difficult for Neil to navigate, including on a family trip to Malaysia last year.
Halfway through the plane trip, the hostess came up and said, "We don't have a tube for you to get off the plane." So the option was that I would be carried down the steps.
The same thing happened arriving back in Melbourne, only this time safety laws prevented him from being carried off. The family were left on board for 2 hours after other passengers disembarked, as the airport scrambled to find a solution.
I was pretty disappointed in the administration. For God's sake, they should have done something quicker about it.
In a statement, Melbourne Airport said it has been upgrading its facilities, but admitted more accessibility improvements could be made. Advocates say transport systems as a whole have been letting people with disability down.
It fails because there's poor services, there's lack of consistency throughout, not just buses, taxis, aviation, trams.
All levels of government hold responsibilities relevant to air travel. Public transport sits with the states and territories, though the federal government sets accessibility legislation for them to follow. A review into the aviation sector is underway, while an audit of public transport accessibility standards is currently with ministers. People with disability want them applied and strengthened.
If those standards aren't complied with and not enforced, what's the point of having them?
The federal government says there has been improvements in accessibility and investment in recent years, but concedes people with disabilities still face issues. It says it's committed to listening to the experiences of people with disability to further tackle discrimination. Meanwhile, some people with disability are taking matters into their own hands.
12:34 a.m. Oh, so 1 minute and we're 3 minutes early. Okay, that's cool. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Santiago Velasquez is blind and an electrical engineer. He's created an app he hopes will help. Halo would allow people to notify a bus or train driver about their pick-up and drop-off locations and what supports they have, such as a ramp. That information then goes to the driver via an alert, so the user doesn't have to advocate for themselves.
The best impact that we're aiming for with Halo is to give people the ability to do whatever they want, whenever they want. Straight.
Santiago developed the app after a frustrating incident on the way to university.
I wasn't able to sit an exam because a bus left my guide dog and I behind. I arrived late. They said, it's too late. You got to repeat this unit. Sucks to be you. List.
The 27-year-old is in talks about trialling his app. His message to transport services everywhere is simple.
Transport should work for everybody, right? That's the whole idea behind it. It's public transport, and it shouldn't be hard.
A Northern Territory footballer could spend a lengthy time on the sidelines after apparently assaulting a junior referee during a men's Premier League match in Darwin. Warwick Williams was involved in a brawl midway through the fourth quarter at Marara Oval yesterday as his side Pint lost to Southern Districts. Williams appears to hit one player and then grab a junior umpire by the shirt. He was immediately sent off. AFL-NT says it's aware of the incident, which has been referred to the match review panel. In a statement, the league said umpires are integral to the game and they have the right to feel safe and valued at the footy. The small but dedicated esports community in the Northern Territory has been given a new home this week with a new gaming and technology hub opening in Darwin. The founder hopes the facility will help take the local esports scene to the next level while also nurturing the budding technology industry. Mitchell Abrams reports.
Timer, time is close, time is close, this could be a part of it. Oh, and the low jab, and you hear the crowd.
This is Tekken 8, a popular fighting game and an esports heavy hitter around the world.
Big punish, walked into.
This exhibition match between Australia and the Philippines was showcased on screens and projected on the walls of the Old Vic Hotel in Darwin's CBD as part of the opening of The Array, an esports and technology hub which the founder hopes will set the stage for future matches.
We're geographically closest to Southeast Asia, who has the highest number of esports players, and that means that our latency is going to be the lowest.
While they might be opponents in-game, both teams say the friendly competition is important in promoting the growth of esports.
Having support like this as a player really means a lot because you get to share your ideas with other people, you get to meet other players from other countries.
10, 20 years ago, it's very different compared to now. We didn't have the environment, we didn't have the backup. Now I think it's good that we're having this. We're able to give the younger generation a go.
So esports isn't the only thing on offer at the Array. There's also going to be a number of technology courses in this classroom space for people of all skill levels to help grow the budding technology industry in the Northern Territory as well.
Especially for Darwin, which has such an emerging industry, we need somewhere where people can go and ask questions, and we need somewhere where people can go and teach the knowledge that they already have.
Helping locals level up in the technology game. Mitchell Abram, ABC News, Darwin.
The Matildas have all but secured a spot at the Paris Games after a 3-0 victory over Uzbekistan in their Olympic playoff series. In freezing conditions in Tashkent, the Australians struggled early without injured captain Sam Kerr.
Wide with Catley, looks up and crosses, Ford is there, and that's 3.
A late goal-scoring blitz moves the Matildas closer to securing a Paris Games berth in July, having beaten Uzbekistan 3-0 in the first leg of their Olympic playoff series.
And the banks have broken and the goals are flooding in.
We had to have some patience, but this game here was important for us to get a good result to set up the second game, so hopefully more goals than what we had tonight.
The Matildas will be looking to avoid another slow start, as was in snowy Tashkent, when the sides face off again in a few days.
Really should have done better.
There were some technical mistakes today, and we need to admit that we left way too many goals on the table today. I mean, our conversion rate must have been really bad.
In their first match without injured skipper Sam Kerr, the world-class striker's absence was glaring, with Australia kept scoreless for more than an hour.
Well, how did that not go in?
Debutant Caitlin Torpey wore Kerr's number 20.
It belongs to her and no one's going to be taking that from her. But yeah, hopefully she was okay watching it.
Veteran Michelle Heyman stepped up, breaking the deadlock in the 72nd minute.
To come on and score a goal, it's a dream come true.
Mary Fowler doubled the advantage.
Clinical, individual finish.
While Caitlin Ford's header sealed the win moments later. Australia boasts hosting rights for Wednesday's sold-out Game 2 in Melbourne.
I'm really excited. I really enjoy being back home and getting to be with the fans and have them watching us in the stands, so really looking forward to it.
Worlds away from frosty Uzbekistan with a sweltering 34 degrees forecast. Chloe Hart, ABC News.
Australia has beaten New Zealand by 27 runs in a rain-interrupted game in Auckland to complete a clean sweep of the men's T20 series. Travis Head made 33 as Australia posted 118 off 10.4 overs. New Zealand was chasing a revised victory target of 126 but could only manage 3 for 98. Australia won the series 3-0 and will now prepare for the first test, which starts on Thursday.
It's a bit of a strange game with the rain, off and on, so we knew, the aggressive way is the way we want to play, especially T20, and sort of make the most of the shorter boundaries here, so it was a good day.
Western Australia has won a third straight domestic 50-over title, overcoming batting wobbles to comfortably beat New South Wales by 5 wickets in Sydney. The Blues were put into bat and looked on track for a competitive total before losing their final 7 wickets for 38 runs to be bowled out for 169. Ollie Davies made 51 and Moses Enriquez added 32, while Joel Paris was the pick of the bowlers, taking 4 for 21. WA's chase started shakily, slipping to 3 for 30 before Josh Philippe and Hilton Cartwright steadied the ship. Cartwright hitting a massive 6 to win the game as he made an unbeaten 73 to be the player of the match. It's the first three-peat since the Blues achieved the feat in the early 2000s.
I think we've used over 20 players this year, and there's so many guys back home that deserve to be here. It really does take a whole squad to win a trophy, and it doesn't happen every day, so let's enjoy this one. Thanks.
Time for the weather now, and we're starting with a viewer photo taken by Caroline Mangi at Mataranka. Scattered showers across the north today with very hot and sunny conditions in the south. It reached 35 degrees today in Darwin, 36 in Jabiru and 34 on the Tiwis. Zooming out, 35 the high in Katherine, 30 degrees in Nhulunbuy. Further south, Tennant Creek saw a high of 36 and Alice Springs hit 39. On the satellite, a cloud band extends from WA over the Bight and across Victoria and Tasmania. Another cloud band lies over eastern Queensland, and storms have developed across much of the north of the continent. A trough lies along the north coast of the top end, linking to a couple of lows over WA, and a ridge extends below the south of the country, broken by a cold front approaching Tasmania. Interstate tomorrow, showers in Brisbane, 32. Showers also in Sydney, 28 degrees there. 31 in Canberra, 21 in Melbourne and Hobart. Adelaide, partly cloudy, 29. And Perth heading for a top of 32. Around the Territory tomorrow, scorching in the centre. Alice Springs to hit 40 degrees, 36 in Tennant Creek. Further north, storms continuing, 34 in Katherine, 31 in Maningrida and Nhulunbuy. And in the west, Darwin heading for a top of 32, 33 degrees in Jabiru and 34 in Wadeye. In Darwin, the morning high tide will be just before 7 a.m. and winds will reach up to 10 knots. The sun will rise at 6:47 and you can watch it set at 7:12. And taking a look at the week ahead, much of the same in Darwin with consistent temperatures and the chance of showers throughout the week. And in Alice Springs, some showers and possible storms later in the week, bringing some much needed relief, with daytime temperatures easing back to the low 30s. That's ABC News for this evening. Thank you for your company. Good night.